very relevant and very hot. And the topic is the untold story of 26 January Mayhem. But before I will go to the topic, I would like to inform you that today, today the world is celebrating World Wetlands Day. World Wetlands Day is celebrated on the second day of February every year. World Wetlands Day is an environmentally related celebration which dates back to the year of 1971 when several environmentalists gathered to reform the protection and love for wetlands. For those who don't know, wetlands are the small environments of plant life and organisms found within water bodies that bring about ecological health in abundance to not only water bodies but environments as a whole. The World Wetlands Secretary Department is originally from Gland, Switzerland, and in accordance to the beginning of World Wetlands Day, the Ramsar Convention first attributed this recognition in the Iranian city of Ramsar on the shores of the Caspian Sea. This day serves to recognize the influence and positive production that wetlands have had on the world and in terms brings communities together for the benefit of Mother Nature. This day also raises global awareness because wetlands play a significant role not only in people but in the planet. Media conference with Lal Goel. Wish you all happy Wetlands Day. Now coming to our main topic, and that is the untold story of the 26th January mayhem. An old saying goes like this: if something looks like a duck, swims like a duck, and quacks like a duck, then it is probably a duck. The telltale signs of striking similarity between the Republic Day riots and mayhem unleashed in the heart of Delhi by so-called farm law protesters. The anti-CA riots that took place in the same city last year, as well as the Arab Spring violence that triggered civil wars in several states of the Middle East, are too profound to ignore. This perhaps brings to the fore the fundamental issue of whether the anarchic violence that Delhi faced not once but twice in the last 1 year were disparate incidents of attempted civil unrest orchestrated by a bunch of rough elements, or whether there is a bigger conspiracy to pin down, cripple, and debilitate India from within. Terrorism in India, according to the Home Ministry, poses a significant threat to the people of India. Compared to other countries, India faces a wide range of terror groups. Terrorism found in India includes Islamic terrorism, separatist terrorism, and left-wing terrorism. India is one of the countries most impacted by terrorism. On January 26, the chants of Raj Karega Khalsa were heard loud in Delhi as actor turned activist Deep Sandhu handed over a Kesari flag to a man to hoist on the ramparts of Red Fort on Tuesday afternoon. Deep Sandhu has been attempting to take the leadership role of the movement despite him being shunned by the farmer unions at various stages. Sindhu took over the main stage at Singhu along with gangster turned activist Lakha Sidhana. They announced that they would hold the march inside Delhi. Deep Sindhu had a plan ready, and first they started a march of their own before the official march of the farmer unions. They then positioned their henchmen in large numbers at a road turning towards central Delhi. From there, they directed other tractors toward Red Fort instead of the agreed route. The volunteers who had tried to intervene were outnumbered by Deep Sandhu and the Sidhana group. In a video posted on Facebook, he said that they had hosted the Nishan Sahib at the Red Fort while exercising their democratic rights to protest. He said that in such a protest, people's anger flares up and you cannot blame one person for inciting the protesters. He also said that they went to Red Fort as a symbolic protest and did not remove the national flag. He further said that we hosted the Nishan Sahib as a sign of unity in diversity. The unfortunate violence near Red Fort on Republic Day is an eye-opener, and it holds lessons for the law enforcement agencies and the police. Any crowd has the potential to turn hostile, more so if it is a leaderless and there is no uniformity in command. In this case, adding fuel to the fire were the irresponsible statements made by certain leaders for political advantage. 26 January violence comes in the backdrop of undesirable elements infiltrating the protests. Earlier, posters of Umar Khalid, among others, were seen at a protest site, and that should not have gone unnoticed. It was imminent that violence would break out, especially if the protesters were allowed inside Delhi. The Delhi police 37-point directive to the protesters was issued only on January 25th. This could not be implemented at a short notice for an agitation of such magnitude. The rallies should have been escorted by police volunteers. That way, the farmers would not have lost their way, as some unions have claimed. However, would like to compliment the Delhi police for showing exemplary restraint, not using lethal weapons against the protesters. It would have opened a Pandora's box, and the criticism against the action would have lasted decades, which was the game plan of Pakistan and Khalistan supporters. They wanted to turn January 26 into another Jallianwala Bagh and brand the police commissioner, General Dyer. Kudos to the Delhi police for not falling into that trap. The Delhi police acted as a mature force and did not open fire. We have to compliment the Mahila contingent of the Delhi police. In the face of great and sudden provocation and imminent danger, they stood their ground and braved the heavily armed and violent agitators. Heavy rewards must be announced on them, and dedicated teams formed to go after India's most wanted. They should be taught a lesson. The sanctity of Republic Day and the tricolor are non-negotiable. Lakha Sidhana and Deep Sidhu delivered incendiary speeches which are on record. Provisions under Maharashtra Control of Organized Crime Act, MOCACA, must be invoked to confiscate all their movable and immovable properties. Affiliation to any political party does not help criminals. As per Mr. Vikram Singh, former DGP UP, I quote, I would like to question those who are calling the tractor driver who succumbed to his injuries a shaheed. The entire nation has seen his reckless driving, ramming into police barriers because of his own indiscretion and dying as a consequence. Let us not glorify that which is a criminal and anti-national, unquote. And to discuss very important topic today about the untold story of 26 January mayhem, we have a very elite, expert, knowledgeable, learned panel with us. And I would like to invite my first panelist. He is Dr. C.V. Anand Bose, IAS. Dr. Bose is one-man expert commission on labor to prepare an action plan for the welfare and development of the workforce in the context of COVID-19. Dr. Bose was former head of disaster management, Government of India, and Central Drought Relief Commissioner, Government of India. He is also the principal advisor, Government of India Heritage Project. He was the Vice Chancellor of National Museum, University of Delhi. He has authored 40 books in English, Malayalam, and Hindi, including novels, short stories, and essays. 4 of his books have become bestsellers. 4 books on Vastu and architecture and 1 book on housing received prestigious the Sharjah International Book Fair Award. Dr. Bose is a housing expert, innovator, writer, orator, and visionary. The path-breaking institutions set up by him, such as Nirmiti Kendra Building Center, District Tourism Council, and Habitat Alliance, have been replicated at the state, national, and global level. He was the head of prestigious Supreme Court Committee on the Treasures of Sri Padmanabha Swami Temple. Dr. Bose addressed United Nations General Assembly and specialized sessions 5 times on various international issues. Dr. Bose is a recipient of 31 national and international awards, including United Nations Global Best of Practice Award. He also received prestigious Jawaharlal Nehru Fellowship. Kerala government termed him Lord of Ideas. Former Prime Minister Mr. Manmohan Singh called him inspired civil servant, and our Honorable Prime Minister Mr. Modi called him man of ideas. Welcome, Dr. Bose, on our show. Dr. Bose, you are the former head of disaster management. Although generally the disaster comes for the floods, earthquakes, etc. But this is also one form of a disaster, man-made disaster, not God-made disaster. And very, very unfortunate. We might have a political differences. We may have different ideology, but our nation is in the forefront. Our tricolor is our honor. Nobody, no one has authority to touch our sentiments on these issues. What has happened on 26 January has been seen by everybody, not only in Delhi, but entire world saw this. Why it has happened? What was the reason? You know far more being in the government, and you have seen so many things earlier in your vast experience as a IAS officer. So the untold story of 26th January mayhem, Dr. C.V. Anand Bose, IAS, please.
Thank you, Mr. Goel. It's very unfortunate that on this Republic Day, India was under attack. India was under attack by the enemies within the country. India was under attack by the enemies and frenemies outside the country. India was under attack by the Break India brigades. India was under attack by a combination of unholy forces, which include Pakistan's ISI, the jihadis, the ultra-left, and all those who wanted to divide this country into Tukda Benega team. But India showed its internal strength, the strength of Indian democracy, which was personified in the police force of this country, which exercised restraint to avoid a carnage on the streets of Delhi. Now let us know who are all responsible for this. The cat is out of the bag. Not one cat, but many cats. The leaders of the so-called farmers' movement, they started distancing themselves from the incidents which took place on 26 January in Delhi. You know, the farmer leaders, they had asked their people to come with lathis along with flags. A lot of incendiary statements, inflammatory speeches, directions, exhortations, which were given to the people, are all there in the public domain now. Then the rush for distancing from the incidents. All the political parties, they found that they have been exposed. Their violent guile has been exposed before the people of India. They also started distancing from this. In fact, the movement fizzled out because it was, everybody knew, it is wolves in the clothes of sheep that paraded themselves on tractors, helter-skelter, on the streets of Delhi. Now, it has really petered out the very day it started. For instance, they had to withdraw their parliament march, which was proposed earlier, and two of the leading organizations which participated in the so-called farmers' agitation, they withdraw formally from the scene. But now they have again ganged up. And what is behind this? In fact, if we go back to the mythology, we will see that all the mythological villains were on the streets of Delhi on that day. We had Ravan who came on his Pushpak Viman to abduct the daughter of the soil, Sita. Here, instead of Pushpak Viman, they came on tractors to abduct the sons of the soil, the farmers. We had the mighty Shaguni there. Shaguni knew full well that he cannot defeat the Pandavas and the Kauravas through force. But Shaguni had a reason to do what he did. Shaguni's sister, she was forcibly taken by the kings of Indraprastha, forcibly imprisoning her father, the king, and 100 sons. Shakuni was the only survivor. He had the duty to avenge the act of the Pandavas or the Kauravas on them. He knew he cannot win over by force. Therefore, he divided the Pandavas and the Kauravas, and we know what happened next. Shakuni was very much there on the streets of Delhi that day. I saw Pudana there. Pudana, who pretended to be the loving mother and tried to suckle to death the young child baby with her toxic milk. I also saw Judas Iscariot stepping out of the Bible and there for 30 sovereigns going to betray his master and guru. This was the scene which we witnessed there. The Goel and Wild of all the characters who are anti-India, the Break India Brigade was there within. And who funded it? The funds came from Khalistanis, from Pakistan. Now it is very much clear on record. I have the statistics before me, not collected from the intelligence department, but from the public domain. It is said the Babar Khalsa of German unit of the Babar Khalsa was paid 5 crore rupees by Pakistan's ISI to foment the trouble. Fund collection was also done in various countries, in Italy, France, in UK, America, Switzerland. Yes, fund collection was there to aid and abet the crime which was done on the streets of Delhi that day. And from Canada, the Canadian connection I'll come to later if you give me a chance later. And each tractor which took part in this were offered 1 lakh rupees. If there is any harm happens to a tractor, 2.7 lakhs. There is also the 250,000 US dollars for who can install, host the Khalistan flag on the India gate. So this was a calculated attempt to destroy the democracy of India, to divide this country into 4 or 400. I think India has exposed those who are behind this. That is why the agitation started petering out. And now, what is this agitation all about? Is it in protection of the farmers? Don't say that the Indian farmer is an incompetent. You know, Indian farmer has proved to the whole world we are the largest producer of milk, largest producer of pulses, largest producer of horticulture products in the whole world. Indian farmer stands second in the production of paddy and wheat. And where is the Indian farmer? The Indian farmer is not an incompetent, he is not a coward. The Indian farmer was responsible for driving out the most powerful multinational in those days. Yes, the corporate which had even an army, the English East India Company. It was kicked off from India by the farmers under the leadership of Mahatma Gandhi, who himself took on the vestiges of a farmer, the loincloth, which is symbolic of the farmer. So now, in the name of the farmer, this agitation is there to subserve certain other interests. And those vested interests are anti-India, anti-democracy. Certainly, India cannot afford this. What did you hear? India has a tradition of honoring its soldiers on the Republic Day. We salute the soldiers, the Jawan. We said Jai Jawan. India also respects, India loves its farmers. Therefore, Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan. I think India is coming back to that realization. India is ready to take on any adversary, whether it is from within or from without. There is a plot against India, this great country, to destabilize its democracy. India never allow that. There are some people in politics who find solutions to problems. There are others who find problems and solutions. We cannot leave Indian democracy to those failed politicians who find problems and solutions. India is ready. Jai Bharat, Vande Mataram. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bose. And Dr. Bose very candidly and very specifically mentioned that this was a game plan by those who wanted to break India. And he said very clearly that this has happened because this was not a farmers' agitation which has done this. It was a game plan of Pakistan, Khalistanis, and all other separatist groups who wanted to show India in a bad light and want to make it tukde things in India, which he says he complimented the Delhi police and the government that how restrained they were, that they have not allowed this scheme to success. And he also mentioned that how the funding was done. He says that he is having reports that money has been transferred from the organizations which are ready, which are very clear enemies of our country. And he also mentioned that how money has been transferred in crores, as well as per tractor, 1 lakh rupees were offered, given for those tractors who have been damaged, 2.5 lakhs. And one more thing which he has revealed is very, very shocking. He says the offer was made that whosoever is going to unfurl the flag of Khalistan on India Gate, he will be offered 2.5 lakh dollars, US dollars. That is very, very sad and very bad on part of anyone who wants to do this for our beloved country. And Dr. Bose is very clear. He says the farmers, and we always, our country has given a full respect from the very beginning. He even said that the Britishers were removed from the country by the farmers under the leadership of Mahatma Gandhi. And he says, today also we give respect not only to our soldiers, but to the farmers. And that's why we always chant Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan. And he says this protest was not by the farmers, but by those who wants to break the country. He even mentioned that now the many farmer unions and the leaders have uh, aloofed themselves from this agitation, but still few more are now again starting, and gathering has started coming up, swelling again. This is unfortunate. And so the views of Dr. Bose is very, very clear that this game plan was pre-planned by the separatists, by the Pakistan, by the Khalistanis, and all those who wants to see India in pieces. And interestingly, he has also mentioned the mythological angle in this particular game plan. And he says one can very well see Ravan, Putna, Shakuni, everyone on the roads in their different roles who were doing this type of mayhem in Delhi on 26 January. Thank you very much, Dr. Bose, for giving your very strong views. I'm sure that these types of views has to go in the mind of every citizen of the country. They should understand why, whosoever he is, how holy your protest is, but no one, not a child, will tolerate such type of protest, that it will go leaderless or it will be a planned one to harm the reputation of our country. No one will tolerate. Thank you very much, Dr. Bose, for giving your views. Now, I would like to go to my next panelist, and he is Mr. M. Harisen Verma, IPS. Mr. M. Harisen Verma, IPS, is of 1985 West Bengal cadre. He worked in various capacities in West Bengal till 2004, when he joined Government of India. He was SP of Bibham district and North 24 Parganas district, which was the largest district in India in terms of population. He served as UN police monitor in Mozambique in 1994. From 2004 till 2019 December, when he retired, he worked under Ministry of Home Affairs in Delhi, Trivandrum, Agartala, and Chennai. He is a recipient of UN Peacekeeping Medal in 1994, Indian Police Medal in 2001, President's Police Medal in 2009, and Ati Utkrisht Seva Padak in 2020 post-retirement. He has written a 500-page analysis on Gita in Malayalam, which was published by DC Books. He is continuing research, study, and writing on Gita. He has also published several poems, short stories, and articles in Malayalam and in English. Welcome, Mr. Harisen Verma, on our show. Mr. Verma, you have heard what Dr. C.V. Anand Bose has spoken. And Mr. Verma, because you were with the Home Affairs Ministry for so long, you have worked in different places, including Delhi. You know ins and outs of the police department very closely, because being an IPS officer. What has happened on 26 January, very, very unfortunate. Now, we would like to know from you, your views on the untold story of 26 January mayhem. Mr. Harisen Verma, please.
Thanks, Mr. Goel. The incidents on 26th January were really very grave, and as see another boss told also, it has exposed the uh, extremist elements working through the farmers' agitation all through the previous months. It's not a stray incident of 26th January only. They have been there and influencing the farmers' leaders also. That's why, despite the central government going out of the way for talking with them and even offering to postpone the implementation of these laws for a period of 1.5 years, despite cross section of our society having approved, supported these laws, and a bulk of the farming community of the country are also not against these laws, even though efforts are going on to mislead them. So this is I mean, outcome of Western interests. And within that, now it has been exposed that there were extremist elements also. The farming leaders cannot absolve of their responsibility. They had given the agreement with the Delhi police. There were 36 points. They were not restrictive, points. They were basically like so you should have identification cards with you. You should have the tractor drivers should have driving license. There should be adequate provisions for water supply like that, and there should be this minimum number of this thing tractors, say 5,000 tractors and 2,500 volunteers. So these were all there, and they were to close from 3 points after 12 o'clock, after the Republic Day parade is over. So these are all there. And these people, remember, just before that, the Supreme Court also had, Honorable Supreme Court intervened and appointed a committee also, that also they had rejected. So these extremists were supported internally by these farming leaders. It seems to be they knew these leaders, uh, but you have told that they tried to isolate them. But then it would have been much better. They could have definitely isolated them very well in these 3 points. They were their leaders should have been present. Their top leaders, where were they? They were not totally absent. And it's not that they come at 12 o'clock and then only close. They are there for the night, previous night also. They're supposed to be there. The farmers were camping. They were all there. Still, the extremist elements came inside. So that means their guilt is very clear. The farming leaders, and that's why they all were on the back foot. And those who were trying to put the government on the dock, they are also on the back foot. And as Sri Anand Bose are told, the elements against our country, they are also on the back foot now after this incident. So that itself will show that the police action, or some people say it's not enough action, that was a successful thing. We will judge a police action after the outcome, whole outcome. It's something to be professionally done, say law and order situation tackling on the streets. That's why we cannot judge that sitting in another place in the comforts of our room. Those who face the crowd, they only can really judge it finally. So that's why the law has given power to a sub-inspector of police and above to declare a crowd as unlawful assembly and take enough action up to the extent of firing, creating fatalities also. That's also given, but it has to be very discreetly used. And before any such law and order situation, there will be a lot of discussions among all levels of policing and also with the political executive in a commissioner system like Delhi. So all must have happened, and police has to act within that framework and parameters, because the political executive knows he has a larger overall view, and the action of the police should not lead to repercussions all over the country, should not put our country or our leadership or our government in a weak wicket, so that the anti-national elements can further go on with their agenda. So that way, I will fully support what I must say that the police has run reasonably well. And there's another general this thing that there's an intelligence failure. Generally, there, people do say that if some incident happens, there's an intelligence failure. Number one, I would like to say that we will never be able to know for sure whether there was an intelligence failure or not on any issue, any law and order issue, unless we get that inputs from very reliable sources later on. That's difficult to get also, because intelligence inputs are only shared very confidentially, and secretly also. So mostly it is what is assumed, and people will generally say that if there's any law and order failure, it's only intelligence failure. It's not like that. It can be failure on the part of the executing law and order agency also. If they, or how to judge an input or intelligence input, whether it is actionable, how to make it actionable. These are all, there are several steps after that. So, to identify, it's also possible that the intelligence must have given clear information, but I feel that there were bad elements here who wanted to create such a situation, as you told, like Jallianwala Bagh, you told, Mr. Goel. So it's possible that their bad intentions were conveyed, and to the law enforcement agencies, the Delhi police, and that also, and to the political executive, that must have also prompted them to act with very discretion and very delicately handling the situation. So these are all I have to say. And yes, there could have been, some people will be saying that these people are allowed to go to the Red Fort, allowed to hoist a flag of the Sikh, revered flag of the Sikh community. Is not a Khalistani flag, but that is there. But at the same time, the police did its all best. Police was not that police was away from the streets. They were in adequate force. So if the situation would have gone for worse, definitely police would have intervened strongly, more strongly. That could have been the police plan. So that we cannot rule it out. And there were so many police officers who were injured. I think there were 394 police personnel injured. And despite suffering all these injuries, they were very patiently, they did handle the crowd. At the same time, they used the lathi charge and tear gas also. So these are generally what I can say. These are the points. And yes, we can definitely, a situation could have been handled better. When if somebody goes to a ground, he may be able to say, or they have done their best, and maybe it's not possible further in the circumstances. So sitting here, we cannot judge all these things. Whatever I find is that so far the government and the police have handled the issue well, and the people have, those are anti-national, they have been exposed. And I believe that slowly these their clout on the farmers will come down, and farmers, the supporting farmers of Punjab, Haryana, and West UP will see the reason. And as Anandabos sir told, there's Rakesh Tikayat, he was on the video saying that please bring lathis for this day. And this gentleman, Deep Sidhu, he was also saying on video after the incident, saying that whatever he has done was, along with the other farm leaders, and they backtracked later on. They became cowards. So definitely there was a plan, and it was a wider plan. And through that plan, these bad elements had infiltrated, and they were trying to do something more than the plan also, their own separate plan within the plan. It often happens like that. The anti-national elements and all, they can sneak in and do even worse things, which the overall planners also may not be thinking. So this all happened, and it was handled better. The Triple Day Parade was not thwarted, and there was an attempt even outside India, same day, in Rome, in the Indian embassy. There was a gathering outside of the Khalistani supporters who who destroyed our constitution, and the Khalistani flag was hoisted there. And again, in Washington DC also, outside the Indian embassy, these Khalistani supporters had come, and with the Khalistani flags and all. So it was this plan within the plan, the smaller plan. People had support really from abroad, and they had a plan all over also. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Verma. And Mr. Verma said very clearly that it's a total game plan of anti-nationals who have infiltrated with the farmers. And he even charged the farmer leaders that they were also knowing about the plan. It's not that only Deep Sidhu has done, because according to Mr. Verma, Deep Sidhu has mentioned that even Mr. Rakesh Tiket was knowing, and other farmers were knowing, leaders were knowing about the plan. Now they have become coward. And he said that he has given the name of Mr. Rakesh Tiket, that he asked the farmers to bring the lathis with them. And he said that people blamed the intelligence department, that it is an intelligence failure. It's not, because there were plans and there are sub-plans. And it is plan within plan, which sometimes even the leaders were not knowing. Only those anti-national people, they only plan those things and try to do the harm to the country. And he said it was not done only in India. They have a full plan. They have done it Rome, outside our embassy, Indian embassy, where they burned the constitution and hosted the, they were having the flags of Khalistan. Similarly, in Washington, D.C., they have done. In many other places, even I can add that they have even disrespected, or rather they destroyed the statue of Mahatma Gandhi in California, which is very, very disrespectful for our own country. And this was done. And he says that they have, they said that they never wanted to do, but they have put a flag there. I can say, whether it is a Nishan Sahib flag or any other flag, why the Red Fort? The religious flag can be on a temple, gurudwara, church, or mosque, not on a monument like a Red Fort. That is a national monument where only the tricolor have the place. No other flag of any religion is allowed to be there. So, but Mr. Verma also praised the Delhi police, that how they have controlled and restrained, although they have full power even to fire. But if they have not, and he said that more than 394 our jawans and officers of police got injured, and but they have done very, very restraintfully. And even the fact is that only one farmer died, and that too with his reckless driving. And the way I'm sure many of our viewers might have seen on the television, it was shown live telecast, that he was driving his tractor on the police force. How come anyone can do like this? You cannot, you are a farmer, you are not a killer. You cannot drive your tractor on a police force which consists of the, even the Mahila police force, the lady police force. You have no sanctity. Anyway, that is my personal view, but I feel that this is very, very cowardly act done by whosoever has done it. And to term it as a shaheed is out of question. Anyways, so thank you very much, Mr. Verma, for giving your views. And I'm sure these views are, whatsoever the views are coming from the government side, or those who knows inside of the working of the government, whether they are not presently, he's working in the government, but he knows how the government works. That's why Mr. Verma has given the view, which are very, very important. So viewers, you have heard the two views, two voices. One is the IAS officer who is presently one-man expert commission, and other is a former director from the Home Affairs Ministry, Government of India. Now, I would like to invite a third voice, independent voice. He is not a government person. He is Mr. Neolipi Rajshekharan. Mr. Neolipi Rajshekharan is a writer, music composer, and CEO of Guru Management Consultants, Bangalore. Mr. Rajshekharan is creative and social active, includes publishing 6 Malayalam novels and over 40 short stories. He published 2 English novels, King Pawn based on Syrian civil war and Azadi based on the conflict in Kashmir. He has published Competency Web, The Corporate DNA, and several other papers. He composed over 200 songs for labels and independent music, currently promoting 3 YouTube channels. He is coaching and mentoring startups. He is having experience of 45 years of international director level. He worked in for-profit and not-for-profit organizations. For 15 years in financial services, Bank of India, Chase Manhattan, and Standard Chartered Bank. 10 years he worked in oil and gas, that is Shell, Exxon Mobil, Qatar Petroleum, and 10 years in non-profits CGIAR World Bank funded international system. He worked for 10 years in consultancy and teaching MBA students, entrepreneurs, and corporates. He lived and worked in over 45 countries across continents. He's a management consultant, coach, speaker, creative writer, musician, and active on social media. He's a strategist on governance, performance management, leadership development, and HR. His expertise in management of startup downsizing, high growth, turnaround, and cultural transformations. He is a member of Mensa International. Welcome, Mr. Rajshekharan, on our show. Mr. Rajshekharan, you have worked and you have written about the Syrian civil war as well as Azadi based on the conflict of Kashmir. And you have stayed in more than 45 countries and you have so much experience. But basically, you are a writer and music composer. Now, you have seen the 26th January mayhem yourself. Now, we would like to know your views, the untold story of 26th January mayhem. Mr. Neoli P. Rajshekharan, please.
Thank you, Dr. Goel. And also I should thank Dr. Anand Bose and Dr. Harisena Verma, both of who have expressed their very valid points of view based on their extensive experience and exposure with the government systems. I don't have that, so I'm going to base my views and my observations on a very different platform. So let me first of all say that whatever they have said, I endorse that. I agree with that because there are things that should never have happened. But rather than going to an emotional reaction on it, I thought if I was talking to a group of MBA students on one of my courses, like if I was doing Power and Politics is one of the courses that I run for MBA students, a very unique kind of course. So then I started looking at what is happening here. Let's step back for a minute and say, what is this all about? And then I came to a certain way of looking, which I would like to share with you, which may be slightly different from the previous speakers. Now, civil disobedience, if we may call that, is nothing new to us. Gandhi practiced it, Gandhiji used the same technique, and he has been successful in that. But there are certain things about civil disobedience which we need to look at to make legitimate. There are two things about legitimacy. One is relevance. Is it relevant to the context? Secondly, is it legitimate? So if you look at disobedience, civil disobedience, in whichever way you look at it, it's a non-violent resistance of people against anything, maybe a law made that they consider is morally or politically wrong. And that's fine. But it's only one of the means of a political process when other struggles have failed. This is very important. When people are not open to negotiations, when people are totally locked and the people in power are not prepared to listen to you, it's very legitimate to do that. Now let's start comparing that with what's happening here. There have been several attempts for negotiations. Farm leaders have rejected, including a Supreme Court of India stay order on the farm laws, as well as the involvement of the Supreme Court itself of the appointed committee. 9 rounds of talks, as far as I know, have taken place between central government and the farmers, represented by farm unions between 14 October and 15 January. All were inconclusive. The government has decided to give a window of about a year and a half for further discussions and negotiations. That's been rejected. So a civil disobedience movement, one of the basic things for its legitimacy is that other means of political processes should have failed. In this case, it hasn't failed. It has been made to fail. So that's one question. So the very first consideration is about its legitimacy is what has happened and does it justify such an action? Even I'm not talking even the 26th, but the whole struggle itself. Secondly, let's look at what is the purpose of this. When we get into political movements like these, there are probably 3 or 4 levels. The first level is what's the philosophy? What are you trying to achieve by this and for whose good? That is one. Then there are strategies, it gets into tactics and it gets into the actions. What we saw were the actions on 26th. But if you step back, what is the interest of this group to do? And do they represent all the farmers in India? Because you contrast it with what he did, Gandhiji represented most of the people in India. except very, very few. So there was again a legitimacy and to his movement because it stood for something which due to a large number of people. Is that the case here? There is no evidence to show that they represent all farmers in India. The third thing is a civil disobedience movement cannot lead to social disorder or a violation of law and order. And if that happens, you have to contrast it with revolution. Now, what's the difference between a civil disobedience movement and a revolution? A revolution is trying to change the system, destroy the system, and put something else in its place. Whereas a civil disobedience movement has to work within the framework of the constitution and the law and to get changes done. So the process that they have to follow is one of negotiation, discussion, and concessions. And any attempt to do that has been foiled. Then it begs the question, what is the real objective? What is the real objective of this thing if it is not to solve the problem? When you look at that, if the real intent is to solve the problem, what are the ways in which they can do that? One will be, as they are demanding, to complete repeal the law. And that goes against any principle of democracy because these decisions have been made by a government which enjoys the majority in terms of representation in the parliament. So they have the authority to make laws which they think are appropriate, but there are groups of people who do not like it. They have a civil way of dealing with it, which is through dance. Now, it's not revolution. So when you come to that, so what is happening here is that the legitimacy of this thing is highly questionable, unless there is a lot of representation that they can prove. And the fourth factor is that any of these kind of actions should be based on facts. A couple of examples. When Gandhiji moved against the British rule, Gandhi believed that the British rule impoverished the Indian people. And he had very specific cases. One was being exported to Manchester and the clothes were being brought back. And that's why, he started campaigns against that, which everyone could see. And people could believe that. There's three things when he came back from South Africa. One was the British rule. The other was the Hindu-Muslim disunity caused by religious separation. And the third was the Hindu tradition of classifying millions of Indians as untouchables. All these three were issues that people could relate to, they could understand, and they could see that changing those would benefit a lot of people. But here, if you look at the agricultural laws, I personally feel that a lot of people haven't really understood it. Because there are things in there which politically you can argue from different platforms. Now, if you look at the history of India, we have been, for the first many years, we had what's called a mixed economy. So a lot of people are on the side of the capitalism, a lot of people are on the side of socialism. Now, has it worked for India? You have to compare with other nations. Internally, we can say it's worked for India, but you look at other countries which got independence almost at the same time. Take Singapore, for example. They had democracy, but as he called, guided democracy. And you can see what Singapore is today. We have had successes. We have also had a lot of failures. Now, the jury is still out on it. Nobody can say that socialism has worked for India or capitalism has worked for India. So there is a government which is trying to raise more resources and bring India into the new world in terms of both in terms of its efficiency and effectiveness, and also in terms of its economic power. And that requires a mixed approach of looking at protecting the weaker sections of the people and at the same time generating capital and also giving a reasonably good role for the capitalists and the private enterprise to play. So here, again, if you look at it, even a revolution is justified if people have no options. Now, if you look at the agricultural laws that have been put in place, it has not removed the state system for procurement. It has not removed the MSP. It has just created another route, another channel, which is open to the farmers if they want to use it. Now, that is not necessary reason for a revolution because they have options. Now, nothing stops the farmer from today from not using that option that has been created. They can still sell it to the states, the procurement systems. What stops? So when you take disobedience movements, there are two kinds of disobedience that can happen. One is to disobey the law which is being protested against. Gandhiji has done some of those in South Africa. If there was a law about a particular kind of registration, he refused to do it. that is protesting against the same law by not complying with it. Now, this is not a mandatory law that has been passed. It's a law that gives options. There's nothing to protest, because if you don't want to use it, don't use it. The second is protesting by disobeying other laws to make their point. Then it point, as the previous speakers have talked about, of law and order. Because I don't like the agricultural law, I'm going to block the roads, I'm going to do whatever I want, I'm going to create, and no sensible government can sit back and watch it. They cannot be spectators in this game. Then what happens is because the government is also representing crores of people who have voted for them, and the obligation and the responsibility of the government is to maintain law and order. So law for no reason is being protested against, or for no good reason is being protested against, or if the protest takes a different form, they cannot be spectators. And I think any country or any regime in any part of the world would sit back and watch actions like that. And the last point I would say is, Gandhiji, when he did all these, he knew the consequences. He went to jails many times. When individuals violate an existing law, they face prison, they face fines, injunctions, damages, and all kinds of unpleasant consequences. You cannot have a situation where I want to protest against the current situation, but I should be immune from everything. That's not possible. Short, if I may say that, if anybody ever has the right to break the law, that cannot be within the law itself. It has to be a moral right against the law. And if it's a moral right, huge responsibility for the people who are taking those actions to convey to the people as to why they're doing it and why they have no other options, and that as the basic reason for resorting to such practices. So I was going a bit behind what happened and saying that there is no logical reason and a compulsion for the kind of actions that are being taken, not only on 26 January, but the overall approach that has been taken in this so-called and the protests. So I think it's high time the leaders started thinking about it, because these kind of activities are not just talking to the government. They are sending messages to the public. They're sending messages to other Indians. And how many of them would believe that there is a strong case to do this? And if they don't do that, the end is very clear. It will not last. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Neolipi Rajshekharan, for giving your views. And he said that he endorsed the views expressed by Dr. C.V. Anand Bose as well as Mr. Hussain Verma. But he says his view is in a different view. He says he compared this thing with a disobedience movement of Mahatma Gandhi. He says Mahatma Gandhi also did the disobedience movement, but there was a logic in that. In this present farmers' protest, there is no logic. And he is giving the examples. He says, whenever you are not agreeing with a particular law, you have right to protest. But this right of protest doesn't mean that you will go on the streets and create ruckus or the mayhem. And he has given the example. He says that like Mahatma Gandhi, when he found that the three things were happening in country. First was that it is ruled by the Britishers. Second, there was a divide between Hindu and Muslims. And the third, he found that in a Hindu community, there is an untouchability. So he tried to give the proper way of the disobedience, not the way these people, the farmers, are doing. He says when Supreme Court has given so much time, they have even given the chance, they even stayed the thing, these laws, but they were not agreeing for anything. It means they are not interested to negotiate. Their only interest is against the government. Now, this, and he also said that the farmers' agitation, if we will see, it's not a pan-India, it's just on a limited pocket. So if you are not, if the entire nation is not with you, how you can say that these laws are bad? Like he again gave the example of Mahatma Gandhi. He says Mahatma Gandhi has getting the confidence of the entire country except few. But here, except few, no one else is giving the confidence to them. So why this farmers protest? And he says this, the way you are blocking the road or you are doing these types of activities is not acceptable in any of the democracy. And he says if we will do this, then our conditions, he compared with Singapore, which also got the freedom almost at the same time. He says how, because the democracy there is a bit restricted, unlike India. But he is very clear. He says this is, you cannot say this is a farmers' agitation in a proper way. It's a holy way. No, it is not, because they are having no proper legal agenda. They are having some other motives, which is cannot be termed as a protest. Thank you very much, Mr. Neoli P. Rajshekharan, for giving your different views about this. I will only say that we are right now not going to merits or demerits of these farms laws. Might be good, might be bad, but 26 January was not at all acceptable. Whether you might be right, you might be wrong, no problem. But you cannot take everything and nation's pride in such a way. Thank you very much, Mr. Neoli Rajshekharan. Now, my question to you, Dr. Bose, is, Dr. Bose, you have witnessed mayhem on the streets of Delhi of farmers' agitation, so-called farmers' agitation. What is your assessment of the whole episode? Dr. Bose, please.
You know, there are factors external and internal, which has got a bearing on what happened in Delhi and what is going to happen. The external aspects, you know, there is a strong Canada connect for this. I can quote what the Canadian senior journalist, Sri Tariq Fateh. He's a Pakistan-born journalist, settled in Canada, very senior person. He is on record that Pakistan, ISI in particular, are very active among the Khalistanis in Canada. As you know, recently, one of the MPs of Trudeau's ruling party, he was expelled because he stated that within the ruling party, extremists are infiltrated. It took only 1 hour for the party to decide to expel this. That so much is a strength of the Khalistanis within the Canadian administrative and political system. So many of them are MPs, and they have formed a very strong lobby, which is doing its best to decry the interests of India. They still hope of a Khalistan resurgence in India. Therefore, the Canadian connection is something which is very strong, which has to be taken seriously. In the city of Vancouver, where there is no Pakistani citizen as such, there is a consulate of Pakistan there. In the guise of the consulate, what they are doing is to whip up passions against India and consolidate the Khalistan forces to rebel against the country. Now, Mr. Harisan Verma would know it better. You know, the recent explosion or attempted or misfired explosion in front of the Israeli embassy, I think that is also the part of an attempt to turn India back to hub of extremism. Extremism and terrorism has been built by India successfully in the last few years. But any attack on Israel, you know, whatever it is, Israel has got a strong policy of counter-terrorism. You know, Golda Meir, who later became prime minister, she was in charge of avenging the killing of the carnage in the Munich Olympics, where all the athletes of Israel were butchered by the Palestinian terrorist organization. Even the last butcher was put to death by Israel. When asked, Golda Meir said, she was asked, why go after these people after long years? She said, that is an unmistakable message which Israel wants to give to anybody. If you harm us, we will be behind you till you are finished. So read it together. Somebody somewhere is trying to turn India into a hub of terrorist activities. And number two, the political inside. I said external and internal factors are there. Internally, you know, the movement had almost fizzled out on the day of the mayhem there, because the people started disowning the movement. Now it is again coming back. That is because of internal political reasons. They are trying the resurgence of Jat politics. You know, Jats are there in Haryana. The Sikh Jats are there in Punjab. They are there in UP.
I think we lost you, Dr. Bose. Mr. Verma, can you hear Dr. Bose?
No.
No, I think we lost you, Dr. Bose. Some net problem. Okay, we will come back to you once your net is. We can't hear you, Dr. Bose, at all. Okay. So what Dr. Bose has explained, you already heard. He has made his points. Although he was making some more points, once his connection will be okay, we will go back to him. Now I will come to Mr. Hussain Verma. Mr. Hussain Verma, you have worked in police and you have worked with home affairs, and you are well aware with the working of both the departments. First thing is, why police allowed this on 26 January? Supreme Court mentioned that the police have having full power about the law and order. They have to decide. Now, when the police have to decide, they should have said very clearly, not on 26 January, it can be 25th or 24th or 27th. Why on 26 January? First question is this. And the connecting question in the same is, don't you think intelligence failure, although you have mentioned, when such type of magnitude, as you also mentioned, the mob is there, and these type of unruly anti-national elements are present there, I'm sure the Intelligence Bureau working there, they might have given this type, when they have incited the people, they would have got the sense that their route, they are going to change, they are going to Red Fort, their plan is in a very, very different way. It's not only the protest. Might be few of the farmers, I'm not saying the all, but few are not planning to do all these things. But those who have done this, why the Intelligence Bureau has not informed the Delhi police as well as to the government, and then why not so much is the other words I will say, don't you think it's a state machinery failure for avoiding or controlling this situation? First question is, police, why they have given the permission, well knowing that this is going to happen? Everybody was knowing. I think if you would have asked a lay person also, he will say yes. Why they have chosen the 26th January when they were saying they mentioned, their leaders mentioned on record on the media that they are not going to Rajpath. When they are not going to Rajpath, why 26th January? 26th January is a very holy day. It's a holy day for us. It's a very pious day for us. Why they have chosen that day? So it means they were having some ulterior motive about it. Why the police have allowed, first place, when the Supreme Court has given the power to them, and secondly, why the intelligence has not informed that they are going to do this thing? Mr. Hussain Verma, please.
Thank you, Mr. Goel. Part of what you asked me, the second part, that intelligence, whether there was intelligence, I believe I already dealt with that. You were telling why Intelligence Bureau could not inform the police. There are other intelligence wings also, police and other police.
Your voice is a bit feeble. Can you just come? Yes.
So, but Mr. Goel, you told of two parts why it happened, why police allowed on 26th January, despite having full endorsement from the Supreme Court that police can decide on, and that's one. Number two is that why there was an intelligence failure. So I believe I have already partly answered what you told earlier about that second part. I will come to that first. Itself, that the intelligence failure, the Intelligence Bureau or any other intelligence agencies, there are several Delhi police and central police organizations, intelligence wings and all. So what I told earlier was that we will not be able to judge whether there was intelligence input or not. That's handed over very confidentially and secretly. So I mean, it may be known maybe later on. Generally, it's not leaked out and all. I'm sure there must have been, as I told, discussion between various agencies. Some plan must have been there, and must have been endorsed by the political executive, because the ultimate responsibility is the political executive. So, if that plans and all, it is also possible that a particular outcome they were deciding. And it's also from the outcome we understand that the number one, the agitation's actual character has got exposed. So that's a victory for the government or the democracy. Number one. Number two is that the at the same time these people who did agitating in Delhi could not do anything very violent or any terrorist activity. So and the public were generally, they were protected. So then that was one prime duty of the police. And police was there adequate strength on the streets everywhere. So if the situation had turned worse, the police would have acted. We cannot predict, we cannot assume now that police would have been silent. In fact, police was not silent. They tried their best without firing, lathi charge and tear gas and all, and around 400 of them got injured also. So then, and also after the agitation, there were several CCTVs, videos, and all. Our actual culprits are being identified. They are being arrested, and FIRs has been loaded, including Deep Situ also. That's also one way of isolating these people, the extremist elements, identifying them, and then taking action against them. At the same time, expose them and expose the general weakness of the farm agitating leaders, the farm leaders of Punjab and Haryana and all, to indulge in these people. They were taking them along, and they were indulging with them. They could have stopped them also. They were along with them when they crossed. So that whole thing have come. They were in a difficult situation. Those also became difficult situation. Those were agitating against the government without any strong reason or ground, as Mr. Rajshekharan told. I mean, it's probably a political aim or also anti-national aim for some. So then I am sure that there's no intelligence failure at all. We cannot judge sitting here, and and in any law and order situation, if there's a failure, it does not necessarily be an intelligence failure, because the executing agency also can fail. The person on the ground, the officer on the ground, he may not be taking enough action, or he may take an excessive action. So everything depends upon how an intelligence input is analyzed and how plan is made. So I think that is not a very correct thing to assume. And as you told about 26th January, so why it is there? Now, the thing is that the law and order control is partly due to mind control, we can say. It's a psychological approach. We cannot deny everything totally. We cannot just by brute force stop everything. So we have to give concession and get some concession. We discussed with them, and there were some 36 points were made, and they agreed with that, and they will cross only from 3 points. So we will also be prepared, and that 3 points only, and not that they are surprising. With surprise, they come from different points. So then, and we cannot, even though it's a very holy day for us, once the Republic Day celebrations, major portion, the parade and other things are over, there's no real reason to deny them. And then that will be too harsh. Let us generally in any law and order situation, we give as much concession as possible. So that is not it has not harmed. It could have happened 27th. The same elements could have created havoc, like try to create havoc like this, or even more, 27th. So maybe if we had denied that, there would have been a much bigger, protest. They will get a ground to criticize the government and the police. No, you see, you are not allowing. The parade will be over in the first half. Why don't you allow in the second half? So they will be putting the police in the weak weekend. So police was confident that it will be able to prevent the worst. So it's something like the Delhi riots last year, or the Delhi riots of 1984, or the other Jallianwala. No, this police was confident, and police allowed, and generally reasonably well police has handled. So that's what I have to tell.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Verma. My only reservation for 26 January was because the police was busy in the parade side, the Rajpath. After all, that is also that much require lots of security, because when VVIPs were attending the parade, definitely the police has to keep the security, and they were engaged there. And to stress them here, is what difficult. But anyways, you have made your point. Now I would like to go to Mr. Rajshekharan. Mr. Rajshekharan, don't you think Supreme Court failed their duty? Now, how? I will just, why they have not taken the undertaking or the affidavits from all those farmers who are going for the negotiations every third day to the to meet agriculture minister, asking them to see to it that they will not do anything, and if they will do it, they will have to vacate and they have to lose whatsoever the affidavit strongest words. Or Supreme, and when Supreme Court knows that when there is a huge mob, no one can stop. Even you know the history of 1992. Even the chief minister has given the undertaking and the affidavit. He could not stop the mob at that time because mob mentality is totally different. And here it is not only a mob, it is, as Dr. Bose and you and everybody, and I also endorse, there anti-national elements were involved. Supreme Court was also knowing, and then when government and Delhi police asked the permission and told them, pleaded, not the permission, they pleaded that please don't allow them on 26 January. Why Supreme Court has passed the bucks to the Delhi police? Why Supreme Court says, no, not on 26, you can do any day, other day. Why Supreme Court has not used the authority? Why they have put the entire responsibility on Delhi police? Mr. Rajshekharan, please.
It's a tough question because unless you are in the seat and unless you are the judges making those decisions, as Mr. Verma has rightly said, see, these are decisions made by people who have a lot more information than we do. And it's rightly so. And in a democracy, you have to respect those decisions made by those institutions. And sometimes they work, sometimes they don't work, which is also true. All that we can do is to learn from what has gone wrong and make sure it doesn't happen again. Because democracy moves through a series of steps. It's not that you get all right and wrong. It's not true. And even if you go back to the agricultural law that we are talking about, I fully agree with what Mr. Verma has said. It's a series of steps. And government, what concerns me is that government has 10 times tried to negotiate and say that if something is not working, let's fix it. So when they don't do that, the question that comes to your mind is, then what are they interested in? If they're not interested in sitting with the government and trying to negotiate and find a right solution for the problem, then what else is their interest? So it looks like a Trojan horse then. There is something inside, and that's what concerns people, and that has come through even more through this. So I would say probably the court did a leap of faith. They took an action and leap of faith. And I think it was good because it has really exposed what has happened. Now imagine the other situation. If it would have been blocked, it would have been a completely different scenario where they would say democracy is being abridged, we are not being allowed to do this. And the same thing I agree with Mr. Verma also. If there was a firing, if the police really did some hard work and took the decision to do a few firings, it will be a very different situation today. And God forbid, some real farmers died in the process, not the culprits. It can happen because a mob is a mob. And then when the balance sheet is drawn, it will only be shown that there were 3 peasants who got fired. All the other will disappear because the entire scenario will change. So it's not an easy job for these people. And I think it's very easy for us to sit outside and make judgments on the decisions being made by these organizations. And I don't subscribe to that, because one of the problems is I've been in positions, not in government, but in corporate positions, when I knew so much and I had to make decisions. But when you look at it from the outside, they would wonder, why this decision is being made. He could have easily done this, or he could easily have done that. But the restrictions as you work with organizations, and especially large organizations, and in democracies. We are a democracy at the end of it, let's face it. So people have the freedom, but when you find that people are misusing the freedom, the question is, what do you do next? To me, that's a more important question. You've allowed in good faith, you've allowed, like I was in banks for 15 years. One of the principles we work on is we work on good faith until people prove that they're not trustworthy. So there is an implicit trust that operates in certain relationships, and these are farmers. And there was no reason, I think, to believe that this kind of thing will happen. It could have happened, but not necessarily that it will happen. It could have been a peaceful protest. It could have been a peaceful one. It will be goodwill. So let's that's my view on that. So
Okay,
I'm not.
Mr. Rajshekharan,
Yeah.
I agree with your views, but I will disagree with one point.
Yeah.
Why people sitting outside are questioning? We are in democracy,
Yeah.
and if as you have mentioned about the bank, yes, bank officers are doing honestly when they are doing honestly, no question asked. But when they are also become dishonest, then the question been asked. And when
Sure.
when we are as a media, we are supposed to ask the questions, because
Yeah.
if we will not ask how the perceptions, when we know the such type of fake news are floating in the market, everyone is flooded every day, so many things. And when we know very well that these farmers are not the protesters now, when we know the protest has been taken shape and controlled by those anti-national elements, we have to ask the question to bring out and tell the viewers that the reality is that they are anti-nationals. When we are dealing with anti-national, whosoever is anti-national, we have to take a strong action. At that time, democracy or no democracy is not the question. Question is, no one can play with our country. The country is at the top. And when the country is at the top, then we will, afterwards, we will see about whether we are doing it democratically or not. But first thing is the country, and the country has to be saved. Its reputation, honor has to be saved. As Dr. Bose has mentioned the incident about the Munich Olympic. Yes, why not? If anybody try to play with our country, we have to take the strongest action against that, irrespective of political affiliation. That was the thing. That's why we are asking. Otherwise, no, we are not. We do not want. We know that after all, Honorable Supreme Court is doing with their. They are supposed to do. Police have also done. Otherwise, tell me why the police, after all, they are in the street, as Mr. Verma has also mentioned. They have to face the consequences, not me and you sitting in the studio or sitting in your room. But still, people, because they have the viewers have the people feel, and that's why we just ask the question so that you can reply.
Yeah.
And it goes. Okay. So
Yeah.
thank you very much, Mr. Rashid.
Can I just make one small response to
yes,
that?
Please. Yes, please.
Because there are two ways of dealing with these kind of situations. One is to stop an action before something, like the Olympics, for example. Israel might have had intelligence, but they never stopped the athletes from going there. The action happened. Once something happens, like has happened in 26 January, there should be absolutely no more concessions for people like that. And we have to take them to task, exactly as Israel said. I agree with that. Okay. But to preempt it and to stop actions, and it will be misconstrued. It'll say that democracy is being abridged, or we are not being allowed to peacefully demonstrate. It will become a different story. But I want to add one more thing there. What you said is so important. There is so much misinformation floating around. And I strongly feel that this government has not done enough to communicate the real pros and cons of this law to a lot more people. I feel that if a lot more people know about it exactly, what is in this law and what is good and bad, there will be much less support for this.
Mr. Rashekharan, as you all know, negative news or the fake news always get the priority. People wants to hear the breaking news, and that is a negative news. They are not interested for positive news at all. Whatsoever we claim that we want to do positive media, but we know that people wants to listen only when there is some sensational news or something which is negative. Everybody wants to hear. That is our human tendency. Anyway, thank you very much, Mr. Rajshekharan. Now I'm going back to Dr. Bose. I think your net is working, Dr. Bose, now. So there is a problem. Yes, Dr. Bose, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Dr. Bose, first you can finish what you are telling, and then in the continuation, the question is, this farmers' agitation has almost heated out after the violence in Delhi, but it is now again gaining momentum. Is there any political reason for that? First, you can finish your whatsoever you are saying, and then you can add this also.
I'll club both.
Yes, please.
So that I can say one time. Your question is very relevant. How came that this agitation, which petered out at some stage, is again gaining momentum? There is a political reason for that, which is based on the Jat politics. Jats were in power in Delhi and also in North India for a long, long time. The heyday was during the time of Chaudhry Charan Singh, who then became the Prime Minister of India, even though for a short while. He was a very powerful Home Minister. Then we had Bansilal, who rose within the Congress party. Of course, later on he created his own party, Haryana Vikas Party, if I am right. Then we had Devilal, Chautala. They are all occupying the center stage of governance. But of late, they are not so much in political power. Now this has given an opportunity for them, or somebody would have made political use of this opportunity to instill in them the hope that Jat politics can again occupy the center stage in national politics. Therefore, once the Jats are within that, there is a strength of about 3.5 crores of people in that. Not that the entire Jats will be there, but certainly a formidable strength it is. And Jat geographically, they are there in UP, they are there in Haryana. The Jats 6 are in Punjab, and there are also Jats in Rajasthan. Most of them are agriculturists. Now, if they are involved in this, the movement will get a thrust, which it can never get if they don't have a closed group of determined persons or group with them. As Rajshekharan rightly said, you see, this is a farmers' movement. The so-called farmers' movement is confined only to certain pockets of India. And ironically, in Delhi, there is no agriculture. There are farmers all over India. How came that their will is not reflected in this? Therefore, it is a localized movement. Now, when it petered out, somebody has cleverly hit upon the idea of bringing in the Jat politics into this. Let us wait and see how it all take turns in future. But one thing I would like to point out here is what happened in the media. The media's role here. The media knows the truth, the media sees the truth, but they are tom-tomming untruth. I'm not running to the entire media, but many in the media who try to distort truth and present it, untruth is presented as truth before the public. Why? Because so many allegations are coming in. I'm not here to make allegations against the media, but people have a doubt. Why? Why the media is behaving like this against their own country? See, media is supposed to tell the truth. They can certainly see, as it is said, fact is sacred. You can interpret it in any way, but fact is sacred. And the doyen of media, Joseph Pulitzer said, our republic and its press will rise or fall together. If there is no Republic of India, there is no press of India. So we should not go to the extent of destroying the sanctity of the republic. You know, in Greek mythology, there is a monster called Medusa. So many young heroes go to encounter her, but they are all vanquished. Finally, Perseus goes to encounter her. You know what Perseus does? Perseus just holds a mirror in front of her. Seeing her own horrible face, Medusa dies of fright. If anybody holds a mirror before some of the Indian media, this is what is going to happen. And if anybody attributes ulterior motives or even pecuniary motives for this, they cannot be blamed. This has happened in India even earlier. See, I come from Kerala, though my name is Bose. In Kerala, the first democratically elected communist government under the communist leader, EMS Namboodiripad, CAA decided that this government shall not survive. CAA pumped in money, and the money went to many political and religious groups there, and also the media. Now there is no secret about it. Daniel Patrick Moynihan has expressed it clearly in his book, The Dangerous Place. And the then ambassador of America to India has also claimed that, yes, it happened. So money going, money flowing, money being used even to influence media is not unknown in Indian history. And if people doubt, the media stands against the country. So let them be against a prime minister. Let them be against a party. That is a democratic right. They cannot be against their own motherland. You know, on the Sarashaya, the bed of arrows, Bhishmacharya tells Yudhishthira, if your country is attacked, that is, if the borders of your nation is transgressed, you should see it as the disrobing of your mother and act strongly. Our mother, Bharat Mata, the most sacred day of Bharat Mata is the Republic Day. On that day, they were disrobing the mother. And the media has got a duty to expose this. Media has a duty to stand together with the country. My country, right or wrong, was earlier known. But India first, India great. Even for the media, that should be the thumb rule. That should be the benchmark. I think unless the media decides to correct itself, I do not appreciate anybody from outside correcting the media. The media has to correct itself. People have a right to know the truth, and the media has a duty to show the truth. I think let's hope that we'll go to a place where India will be a place where truth will be honored. Satyameva Jayade, Satyam Vada, Dharmam Chara.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bose. So today you have seen the untold story of 26th January mayhem. And it has been mentioned by expert panelists that it was an anti-national act. We cannot term it as an agitation. We cannot term it as a protest. The plan was very big, thanks to the government, thanks to our Delhi police, that they saved our country, they saved our Republic Day on that day. And the message is very, very clear by all the panelists. You can do the protest peaceful, but you cannot do with the anti-nationals. Anti-nationals will remain anti-national, whatsoever caste, creed they belongs. After all, India first, our country first. Thank you very much, all the panelists. And today's program has been live telecasted by V4 News, Global TV, V4 Stream, Malnadu TV, News Gaon se, Samvad Sarokar News, as well as it was shown live on Facebook and YouTube. And our endeavor is to every day bring to you a new topic. And tomorrow topic is also very relevant. As you might have heard, the one judgment from the Bombay High Court Nagpur bench, and then although it was stayed by the Supreme Court, and the topic tomorrow for media conference with Lal Goel at 10:30 a.m. is sexual harassment, skin to skin contact question mark. Means whether the judgment which has been delivered by Honorable Lady Judge of Bombay High Court Nagpur bench, although it was stayed clearly by the Supreme Court, whether that is correct or not. We are going to discuss that point, and our panelists are Honorable Justice Anjana Prakash, Senior Advocate, now former Judge, Patna High Court, New Delhi, Advocate Kanishka Tyagi, Head Business Strategies, Legam Amicus, New Delhi, Advocate Divya Goel, Partner, Legam Amicus, New Delhi, Advocate Srijan Mishra, BLLB Honors, LLM, Research Scholar, Maharashtra National Law University, Nagpur. So please tune in tomorrow for media conference with Lal Goel at 10:30 a.m. Thank you very much, Dr. C.V. Anand Bose. Thank you very much, Mr. Hussein Verma. Thank you very much, Mr. Raj Shekharan, for giving your views and enlightening the correct story of the 26th January. So please, viewers, don't go for the fake news which are floating about the 26th January and afterwards. Go and listen the reality, the truth, because media also have a very, very responsible role to play in our country. Thank you very much. Thank you all the viewers for watching our show.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.